IRS, the real facts. Many believe that they are required to pay an income tax to a branch of the United States government called the Internal Revenue Service. The origins and history of the IRS shows just how in error these beliefs are. Not only is there no law that requires most Americans to file an individual tax return, but the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, wasn't even created by an act of Congress. Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the Constitution of the United States of America, in pertinent part, provides that direct taxes shall be appointed among the several states, which may be included within this union, according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons 3/5 of all other persons. In 1894, Congress passed a law which purportedly imposed a direct income tax on the citizens of the several states within this union, but failed to make any provision for apportionment as required by Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the Constitution of the United States of America. In the case of Pollack v. Farmers Loan and Trust Company, U.S. 1895, the U.S. Supreme Court struck the law down as being unconstitutional because it failed to make any provision for apportionment as required by Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3. Thereafter, Congress passed the 16th Amendment to the Constitution, which was declared to have been ratified in 1913. The 16th Amendment provides that, quote, "The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states, and without regard to any census or enumeration," quote. The constitutionality of the 16th Amendment was challenged in a case of Brasheber v. Union Pacific R.R. Company, 240 U.S. 1, 1916. The U.S. Supreme Court acknowledged the apparent conflict between Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the Constitution, which required all direct taxes to be apportioned, and the 16th Amendment, which appeared to eliminate the apportionment requirement. The court pointed out that the 16th Amendment did not repeal Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, but noted that it was under a duty to uphold the 16th Amendment. If it could be interpreted in such a way so as to eliminate the conflict, the court did hold the amendment constitutional, but only because it interpreted the amendment as applying only to indirect taxes or excise taxes, and not to direct taxes. Brasheber and other cases that followed stated that the 16th Amendment did not give Congress any new or additional taxing powers that it did not already have, but merely put into written form the state of the law as it previously existed. Congress did not pass any other law intended to impose a direct tax on income until 1939. When the Public Salary Tax Act of 1939 was passed, the Public Salary Tax Act, Section 1, which is now designated as 26 U.S.C. 1. The Public Salary Tax Act, Section 1, imposed a tax upon the income of federal employees, U.S. citizens, and non-resident aliens. The term United States is defined in 26 U.S.C. 7701(9) as, quote, when used in a geographical sense, the term United States means only the states and the District of Columbia. Section 1101(10) defines the term states as follows. The term states shall be construed to include the District of Columbia when necessary to carry out the purpose of this title. It is always necessary to construe the term states as including the District of Columbia, because Congress did not include the 50 states, nor the Commonwealths of Puerto Rico, Guam, the Virgin Islands, or American Samoa. The Public Salary Tax Cut Act of 1939 did not apply to citizens of the 48 states, now the 50 states. After Pearl Harbor was bombed by Japan on December 7, 1941, Congress declared a war and passed the Victory Tax Act of 1942 in order to raise money to support an army. This was done in accordance with Article 1, Section 8, Clause 12 of the Constitution of the United States of America, which provides, quote, the Congress should have power to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a longer term than 2 years, quote. In 1942, for the first time in the history of this country, the Bureau of Internal Revenue sent out 1040 form to the general public in the 48 states. This was done even though the Victory Tax Act of 1942 only applied to citizens and the residents of the District of Columbia and non-resident aliens. Most people thought that the Victory Tax Cut required everyone to file a tax return and pay tax on, quote, income, quote. So they voluntarily filed a Form 1040 in 1942, 1943, and 1944. On May 29, 1944, Congress repealed the Victory Tax Cut of 1942. But the news media did not publicize that fact. In 1945, the Bureau of Internal Revenue decided to mass mail 1040 forms to the general public just to see what would happen Why not? The vast majority of the people had voluntarily filed tax returns before. Since the public believed that the Victory Tax Act was mandatory in the then 48 states and did not know that it had been repealed, they filled out the 1040 forms and mailed them in along with their checks. The Bureau of Internal Revenue was ecstatic and committed itself to continue perpetrating the fraud on the citizens of the 48 states. So, the Bureau of Internal Revenue has continued to send out Form 1040s each and every year since. Don't be fooled. The Internal Revenue Code was first enacted in 1939 and was called the Public Salary Tax Act of 1939. So it was called the Public Salary Tax Act of 1939. Since that time, the name of the Public Salary Tax Act was changed to the, quote, Internal Revenue Code, quote, which was amended in 1953 and 1987. However, the amendments did not change the fact that it only applies to the District of Columbia and the federal territories and possessions. There is no provision in the Internal Revenue Code that imposes a direct income tax on the citizens of the 50 states, nor a requirement to file an income tax return unless employed by the federal government. If you are a citizen of Florida, a republic, or any other state, and not a federal employee, nor a citizen or resident of the District of Columbia, you are not required by law to file a U.S. individual income tax return.